us today.
How are you doing, Paul?
And we're also delighted to be joined by our guest today, Jim Conlan. So welcome, Jim. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem, Paul.
Now, this topic now we're going to talk about, I suppose, it's the easiest story. I suppose I've been predicting this since before in July. And eventually the FAI, after doing a review of the Women's World Cup held in Australia, they had decided not to renew the contract of the existing manager, Vera Pauw. And she's going to be let go. Her contract is up. She won't be reappointed. They have a new. We have the graphic here. They have a temporary coach or temporary manager in for a couple of games. Her name is Eileen Gleeson, I believe, but she works for the FAI anyway. She's the director of women, but she won't be getting the job long term, I believe, anyway. So they'll be looking for a new manager. So Jim, first for you, what are your thoughts on that? The Vera Pauw's contract after getting Ireland to the World Cup for the very first time wasn't renewed.
It's player power, really, isn't it? Player revolt, really. She probably lost the dressing room and the locker room, and there's probably an awful lot of big egos and big personalities in that Irish sort of squad that play over in the Premier League ladies version over in the UK, that have many sort of wealth of experience and influence in that camp. And obviously, if you lose one of the two key members of that sort of squad in the dressing room in terms of their influence, and a mini sort of revolt happens, it becomes very hard to turn the ship around. And it seemed that she lost Katie McCabe before even the World Cup started, and Katie is a big sort of influential sort of figure in Irish ladies football soccer in terms of her sort of influence on the scene. Obviously her career with Arsenal, she's talked up as one of the sort of leading lights of English ladies soccer. So when you have a revolt like that we saw with Mick McCarthy and Roy Keane, it can either in one way or the other. One sort of seems to go, and it feels like the relationship with Vera and Katie was at tender hooks even before the tournament started, and maybe there was a threat maybe for Katie of maybe walking out and maybe foregoing her Ireland duties if Vera didn't step aside in terms of that. But when you saw what happened on the pitch in terms of Katie trying to influence the manager's sort of decisions and stuff like that, that all goes to show that maybe inside the camp that her powers were waning, because especially in a World Cup like that, a manager has to have such a strong authority figure in the line that no one is above the manager, above the team. And it just got sense of vibes that Katie maybe had too much influence in terms of that Irish World Cup squad. It's an awful situation for Vera, because look where Irish soccer was before she came in, and the women's team was. In terms of that, it just goes to show influential characters and player power, and things can turn. And if that leading light decides that you're not for her, as the saying goes, and the day goes by, maybe it was the fear of losing Katie more than the fear of losing Vera that maybe meant Irish women FAI and Women's Authority Act.
Yeah, Noel, I go to you, Noel, but I can tell you, Noel, if I was the manager of a team and a captain of a team or any player was telling me what to do, I would have immediately substituted them in the story. And you go back to any of the great managers, Alex Ferguson. I give you an example of Alex Ferguson in Manchester United. He got rid of all the top players when eventually they challenged him in any way at all. You can go through them all: Roy Keane, Beckham, Yad Stam. I could name out more. Mark Hughes, Conchelsis, how many more of them? So, no, what are your thoughts on this? To me, it was the biggest open secret, as I told you before with the previous podcast. In my opinion, this decision was made before the World Cup even started. So, Noel, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Vera Pauw in the interview she did with Tony O'Donnell, who said that the review was premeditated. It was pretty much, she said, even after the World Cup, even this statement she made, I think she had it ready a couple of days before, and so she knew the writing was on the wall. She knew what was coming, and I think it's just very, very sad the way everything has ended. I think a woman that's been given 4 years of her life developing Irish football, very unlucky not to get to the Euros, but got us to the first ever World Cup, and the game now in the Aviva in a couple of weeks' time, the person that's made the biggest contribution to making it happen, because let's face it, they weren't getting many. Now, obviously, it's been progression every couple of years, but Vera Pauw took it on to another stage altogether. They wouldn't be in the Aviva, they wouldn't have gotten to the World Cup without Vera Pauw, and the fact that she's not going to be there managing the team, I find quite sad. And just on the players, I did see the interview she did. She didn't criticize the players. The main issue I found with Vera was the FAI. The whole talk about player power, but the one thing I think that really I wouldn't say finished Vera Pauw was the Athletic article. She was being accused of stuff that from
we said it before, though. I'm sorry for cutting across you. This had nothing to do with the Irish team. This was some club aside in America. And again, I'm not attacking America, but I have no interest in that club aside in America. Yeah. My only interest, if I was involved in the FAI, is what she was doing with the Irish team in the story. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, just in the statement there, I seem to give the FAI an excuse to stop negotiations on the contract. Because there's something about the Athletic article at the start of July. And the FAI she said around March and July, she said the FAI seemed to be going cold on the new contract. And the FAI, it was discussed, and then next thing the FAI said we'll discuss it after the World Cup. Now, obviously, the World Cup happened. We got a point. We performed very well. Bearing in mind the teams that were in the group. But I think Vera knew the writing was on the wall, as I said. I think when they're talking, Vera Pauw mentioned the press conference, the Ireland-France press conference, where every question was about the allegations. I think the players are getting really peed off about it. And I think if there was a sign there where the players were sort of getting tired of talking about Vera Pauw's situation, that was it. And I don't think they went into the World Cup in a happy mood, shall we say. And I think this baggage was happening all the time. And I think it I wouldn't say it gave the players the excuse, and the FAI excuse to talk about Vera's contract, but it certainly didn't help. And it was like, as I said to you in a couple of podcasts ago, Paul, this was baggage that was coming down the line. The FAI, I think you gave the FAI another reason not to give her the contract. I just feel that the last year, the whole controversy in Scotland and Glasgow after the match, we're not going to go into that, but then the articles twice in the Athletic, and it's just been one thing after another Vera Pauw has had to deal with.
Yeah,
I think she's managed very, very well. She's straight talker. There's no BS with her. I think that's what maybe the FAI, some of the FAI don't like that, and I think Vera Pauw's situation used to be that her main issue was the FAI contract is gone, but she'll move on. That's football at the end of the day. But I think it's just a real sad way to end, to be honest.
Jim, right, we'll go back to you, Jim. I'm going to go back to the role of the media. No one mentioned that press conference before they flew out, the last with a warm-up game against France, I think it was. To me, and this is only my opinion, I have no evidence, that the stories that started appearing in the Irish media, I have a funny feeling, and I can't prove this is only an opinion, but that's a set-up job. Because that didn't happen, Jim. You were involved in the media. You know when these stories come out, stories like that don't just happen. There's something behind it. I have no proof. But what do you think in the role of the media, certain media before the Irish team flew out, that instead of getting behind the team and the manager, criticise the manager for the tactics on the pitch and the results? But before they flew out to the tournament, the media were already sniping. And I smelled a rat, but look, that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts on that, Jim?
Well, we've all known down through the years of a so-called people within sort of clubs and organisations with personal agendas, and obviously that are, dare I say, that they sort of know the media industry and circle mostly in Europe, as everybody knows everybody. So most of the journalists are on speaking terms with most people within those organizations. Most of them have their own phone numbers, WhatsApps and sort of stuff. So if you got an agenda to push and you have a journalist that is eager looking for a story to make it a name for himself or to make backstage news, it's always listen, I'll do you a favor, I'll give you this sort of leak, you can start to put this out there, don't source me where it came from. And it's very hard to trace it back and where it came from and whereabouts. But this is always, normally these leaks come within the organization, that someone that says, well, they have contacts high up and they know they can get it to the right people or the people to publish those sort of stories and in terms of that. So we've seen it happen so many times down to the club. So that's my own personal experience with it, that it comes from within those organizations themselves, and it's not a case of having to go and knock at an office of a media organization. Nowadays it's just a simple case of WhatsApping someone and sending them an attachment of certain things or sort of stuff like that. It can be done at 9 o'clock at night and there's no way of proving of who sent what or how the leak got out. It's so much easier these days. If you got an agenda to pick with someone and you got something you think you can use on them, it can be done in the space of a minute or two.
Jim, just to finish up, Jim, last question. Looking forward, where do you think the Irish women's team are going to go? And have you any thoughts of who might come in as a full-timer? Just a quick one before the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, but obviously with all this confrontation and all the controversies that came after the World Cup, if you're looking on and you're looking on an outsider, you think to yourself, maybe is there a future scenario down the road for me? Maybe has this sort of team peaked? Maybe in terms of the dressing room, it doesn't sort of look good. This is supposed to be a building block for Irish women's soccer, and it's sort of clouded in controversy now. So if you're a foreigner on the outside, you're saying to yourself, do I really want to get involved in a project that might have peaked and it might have been on the way down in terms of that? So in terms of getting a big name, maybe or not, maybe some unproven manager that wants to start to prove themselves, that wants to make the next step in their careers. But to get a big name now after this controversy, it might be very, very hard.
Yeah, no, just a final word for you. Just going forward, what are your thoughts on the Irish team? Obviously, they're looking around now for a full-time manager, but there's a temporary manager there for the next 2 games. But just going forward, a quick thought before we finish up.
Well, I think for women's football, this is probably the most important time to fill a manager they've ever had. Because this is where they're on. Let's just say they're getting very noticeable now. Let's face it, because obviously in 2017 when they protested Liberty Hall, it was all about tracksuits and stuff and the facilities to FAI now. And they delivered now, they got to the World Cup, but now it's taken on to the next step, getting to tournaments on a regular basis now. Because at the moment, I think we have some very good players playing at top level clubs in England, like Kane McCabe mentioned, and Arsenal and stuff like that. So I think with the Irish women's team, they need to strike with irons hot now. Something that maybe the women's team under Jack, after a couple of years when Jack left, there was a fall off. The women's team have to make sure that doesn't happen here now with him, because obviously TV, media, they're all getting the publicity now. They're all household names. Some of them now, because they were saying that you couldn't drive through Dublin without seeing Kenny McCabe's face on murals on the walls and stuff like that. So they have to strike with irons hot now. They're in DV, but they're not coming in DV for very long, because obviously Tallagh's their main stadium. Sometimes they couldn't fill it, sometimes they did. So they need to get results, and they need to get a manager. Maybe not a top level manager, certainly a manager like Jim said, that wants to make a bit of progression. He or she, whoever it is, they need to make sure to get the right person in and get results, because at the moment Irish women's football is on a sort of like a downer the way Vera Pauw, the whole situation with the FAI has been dealt with. They need to get a good manager in, and to get good results and go forward in for the Euro.